I'm Steve Worley. I'm a member, a director on the board of the tinyML Foundation, and it's my pleasure to chair this healthcare section where we have four great talks, and they revolve around healthcare, obviously, and the goal number 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, which I'll just repeat. Number 3 is good health and well-being, ensuring healthy lives and promoting the well-being for all at all ages is essential to sustainable development. It sounds a little bit like the tinyML Foundation vision. So without further ado, let's get moving on it. And so it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, which is Arijit Das from Edge Impulse. And he's going to talk on pneumonia detection using embedded machine learning.
So hello there. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this talk of mine in where I will be sharing you on how I built a completely open source project which can detect pneumonia with the help of tinyML. Next slide, please. All right. So let me first get to what is the main problem treatment of our main project. So pneumonia is a super common disease in the world today, and WHO says that every year around 450 million people are affected by pneumonia all across the globe, out of which around 4 to 5 million people die due to the unavailability of proper hospital resources. So here is a small graph, and it sees that the number of people that are mostly being affected by pneumonia are the children that are under the ages of 5 to 7, or the elderly citizens who are above the age of 50 or 60. So what can we think about for a tinyML solution to pneumonia, for detecting pneumonia? So we are using a Sony Specimens mainboard with its camera shield, and we have made an Edge Impulse tinyML model, which can detect pneumonia with the help of ultra low power and uses the chest X-rays for scanning. So detection of pneumonia is mostly being done with the help of chest X-rays and a doctor, whereas this small little device can do it in a few seconds with much higher accuracy than by a doctor. The project is fully functional and it has been tested clinically through the help of some following surveys, and more than 10 doctors in our locality has tested them and has clinically proven that this thing actually works. So the impact for this project is that this is a superbly impactful project for detection of pneumonia in a much less time with a much less labor work needed. Detection of pneumonia can take anywhere between a day to 3 or 4 days, but this device can do all of it in less than a minute, which is superbly helpful in situations where we have a large number of patients being affected with a same disease. So this project will be marvelously helpful in highly affected regions of sub-Saharan Africa. Then there is South Asia and more places where the lives of people are in much danger due to the spreading cases of pneumonia. So the call to action for the tinyML community is that we can have a better UI UX design for the project, for it becomes easier for the users to navigate throughout the entire process. So the help needed is that the project is open for contributions. Feel free to raise any PRs to our GitHub repository. I have proven the link in over here, and you can raise the PRs. We can make changes and help this thing to grow on.
All right, thanks, Arijit. That was great. Keeping the ball moving, let's move on to our next speaker, who is Suren JAYASURIYA from ASU, Arizona State University. He's an assistant professor there, and he's going to be talking about tinyML solutions for extreme heat sensing for urban climate science. Suren?
Thank you, Steve. So next slide, please. So the real motivation for this problem is that extreme heat is getting worse. We've seen record number of summers, and across the US, 25% of all weather-related deaths, the most in that category, is related to extreme heat due to heat stroke and other dehydration and other type of adverse health effects. So with climate change, extreme heat is a growing problem for our cities, our infrastructure, and for our citizens. To measure the effects of heat on the human body, researchers really turned to a measure called mean radiant temperature and how it affects humans. That's a average of all of the long wave and short wave exposure reflected of radiation that arrives at the human body. And so the point is that it's not just about temperature, it's not just about staying out of the sun. It actually turns out that at nighttime, the transitions in heat, where you think it would be cooler, can actually be the most damaging for heat exposure and for the elderly and underprivileged who are out in these extreme heat waves. So this is a very complex problem intersecting climate change and health and urban infrastructure. So we're just proposing small solution just to get more information, which is we are building these devices called martinis to measure MRT or mean radiant temperature. These are low-cost mobile platforms for biometeorological sensing. We've reduced the existing setups, which actually are $20,000 with really expensive sensors, down to a $200 prototype that uses an Arduino Uno and a Node MCU microcontrollers connected to a bunch of different sensors like wind sensor, air temperature, humidity, UV. And that data is being collected and computed and performing machine learning models to determine mean radiant temperature. We've also looked into additional functionalities such as embedded computer vision to detect shade usage and monitor humans in a natural environment dealing with extreme heat. So the impact of this is that urban infrastructure can increase heat, these urban heat island effects, or mitigate it through the use of vegetation, urban form materials, and sensing can help provide feedback and information for infrastructure, as well as health warnings. So the initial impact is we're deploying these martinis in the city of Tempe, Arizona, and local parks, measuring heat behaviors for extended period of time, for 1 month, and we want to inform the city of Tempe of outdoor space usage. So next steps is how can we couple these heat sensors with health risk analysis, analytics, and provide feedback for cities and pedestrians. There's several challenges here spanning the technology stack. But for the tinyML community, we need tinyML solutions that can help improve this technology, make heat sensing cheap, ubiquitous, able to be plugged in anywhere and everywhere in our urban communities, and also the tinyML community to help spread awareness about climate change and its effect on people's health. Thank you.
Thanks, Suren. Again, very informative talk and a problem that needs to be solved worldwide, obviously. Our next speaker is, I believe it's Moussa SECK. He's an engineer in the networks and telecommunications, Ecole Supérieure, Polytechnique, Dakar. And his talk is how Dr. Cal will save healthcare personnel from coronavirus.
Okay, hello everybody. I hope that you feel good. My name is Moussa SECK. I'm a design engineer in telecommunications and networks. So I'm representing the Polytechnique School of Dakar from Senegal. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk about our solution to Dakar. So Dakar is a robot who moves autonomously and who helps the doctor against the coronavirus pandemic. So next slide, please, for my explanations. Okay, so at the beginning, we had some problem statement. For example, according to the World Health Organization, it is reported that nearly 14% of coronavirus cases worldwide are among caregivers. It is alarming. Also, the personal protective equipment is expensive, of course, in developing countries, such like our country, Senegal. We had also overloaded hospitals during the coronavirus pandemic. And for these problems, we had implemented a solution, DOCA. DOCA aims to reduce the exposure of health personnel during the management of patients with the coronavirus, to reduce also the cost associated with the purchase of personal protective equipment, and digitalize the Senegalese health sector with telemedicine. So for the tinyML solution, in our robot, we have embedded smart health sensor in the robotic arm. So you can use the doctor to consult the patient remotely. With the sensor, he can take the temperature, the blood pressure, and the oxygenation rate of the patient. We had also embedded SLAM algorithm who can help the robot to move autonomously in the hospital. So our solution have some impacts. So we help to reduce the contamination rates among users, among nurses and doctors. We help also to improve the digitization of patient care, to improve also the patient care. And here is some call to action. So we'll be very pleased to. So I think that there is some problem with. Okay, so we'll be very pleased to have a collaboration with you, with some person to enhance the hardware and software parts. We need also to create a crowdfunding campaign to help the Dakar team to develop the second version of our robot. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Moussa, as well. Finally, our next speaker and the final talk in this healthcare section is Marvin OGORE, a student at the University of Rwanda, and his talk is called Offline Prediction of Cholera in Rural Communal Tap Waters Using Edge AI Inference. So Marvin?
My solution was based on cholera, which is accounting for 54% in Africa, actually. So my solution was targeting to solve the problem of having laboratory detection. So we need a cheaper solution that can be scalable and deployed on a mass scale. So our solution was targeting to solve that problem, according to my first slide. So the solution will be based on tinyML, which will be detecting physical chemical parameters, taking leverage on IoT devices, as I'll be describing as the basis of my solution on my first slide. Moving on to the next slide, we'll be looking at the solution design, what it entails. So it will be based on physical chemical parameters. So the slide after the motivation of the study is looking at the physical chemical parameters that will be taking salinity and temperature. So this was based on the data that we found in Katana Health Zone, that is an area that is in Lake Kivu, that is in Rwanda. So it will be feeding into an ARM-based Cortex device that is able to unload tinyML and will be able to inference whether water has cholera or does not have cholera. Moving on, we'll be aiming to have, we looked at some of the solutions that are available. We'll have some that are using iPhones, some are using traditional laboratory techniques on a board. So that is having lamp on a chip, which is not scalable. It requires refilling of reagents. And so this is how we were able to identify gaps that are expensive. Some are relying on cloud-based architectures. So our solution is looking at how can we remove the need to constantly have a network connection, since in rural African communal settings, we have this issue. Moving on to the next slide. As I described, the solution is a pluggable device which can sense data, and we can able to transmit it to our microcontroller unit and transmit notifications through GPRS and GSM. Moving on to the next slide. We started with an embedded simulation. We were targeting an STM cube because the Proteus simulation application only does not support Arduino BLE sense at the time of the simulation. Moving on. Further, we have our simulation results where we have from live classification and comparison on simulation platform, we'll be able to get similar results. Moving on. We were able to get some hardware and we were able to unload our tinyML. So thus far we are able to combine sensors with but we are experiencing since we are still combining with Arduino Uno and transmitting parameters through wires to the Arduino BLE. Some libraries do not work efficiently. Moving on. So these are the results of our model. I'll ask you to move on to the next slide, please. Our call to action, we'll be targeting public communal taps. We'll see that will be affecting 1.5 million people and 2 million people in rural areas, according to WHO GMP data of 2017. And also we have other countries like South Africa in 2020, up to 7.5 million people, meaning 13% were still not able to have access to clean water. Moving on to the next slide. Our call to action is to call for partners to help us to have extensive prototyping. We need to explore more data sets. Since our data set was still low, we had to increase it synthetically. We need to perform lab control comparisons and scale to other embedded providers such as STM and Arduino. We'll be asking for grants, investments to scale production, PCB designing, and board acquisition, and so on and so forth. So we have a company that we started that's called tinyAI Solutions, based in Rwanda, that will be able to be partnered in these solutions. Thank you so much for your time. That is all I have for this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Marvin. That was great. Very impressive. So that brings us to the end of the healthcare section of the event this morning, this day. As always, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Without this, it can't be done. So specifically our strategic partners, these are companies that have got involved in tinyML to help steer the direction and set the vision and drive the vision. And we'd love to see more strategic partners come along. We meet once a quarter where we can talk about some of these issues and technologies in a smaller group, and come out of those meetings with specific calls to action. So if you'd like to get involved with the tinyML Foundation, and we'll give you more information. So the partners are Aeon Devices, ARM, DeepLight, Edge Impulse, EMSA, Greenwaves Technology, Gravity, HOTG, Imagimob, Latent AI, Maxim, who are now part of Analog Devices, Qualcomm, IXO, Reality AI, Renesas, Rexon, SAP, Seed, Sensimal, Stream Analyze, SynSense, and Sentient. In terms of executive partners, we have various levels of partners and sponsorship. There's more information about this at tinyml.org. But we have ARM, who's been a great supporter since the beginning. Edge Impulse, who is a great solution for all tinyML developers. Qualcomm, again, one of the founding members of tinyML Foundation. And Sentient, and then our platinum partners, DeepLight, Reality AI, Renesas, and our gold partners, Latent AI, Maxim Integrated, now Analog Devices, Seed, Sensimal, SynSense, and our silver partners, Aeon Devices, EMSA, HOTG, Greenwaves, Gravity, Magimob, IXO, Rexon, SAP, Stream Analyze. So thank you. Once again, this has been a fantastic event. I've learned a lot and been inspired tremendously. I hope you have. And it's now about rolling our sleeves up and getting down to action and helping the people that have requested help this morning in some of their talks, and showcasing some of their global initiatives that they're working on. I'm sure we can all come together and give a helping hand. And let's all get together and solve some of these global challenges. And if you need more information, just go to tinyml.org.